The ant does not warn the beetle. It does not posture. It does not retreat. It does not perform any of the threat displays that most insects use to signal danger before committing to a physical response. It simply opens its jaws, and in the fraction of a second that follows, something happens that the human eye registers only as a blur and a result. The beetle is gone. Not injured and fleeing. Gone. Launched from the surface of the leaf with a force so disproportionate to the size of the ant that produced it, that the first researchers to measure it in a laboratory setting initially questioned their own equipment. The jaw had closed, the beetle had been catapulted, and the ant was standing in the same position it had occupied before the encounter, as if nothing had happened, as if the violence of the last 4 milliseconds had not registered as an event worth adjusting its posture for. The ant is Odontomachus bauri, the trap-jaw ant. It is found across Central and South America and parts of the southern United States, in forest floors and leaf litter, and the dark, humid spaces where the soil meets rotting wood. It is approximately 12 millimeters long. Its jaws, the long straight mandibles that extend forward from the front of its head and can be opened to a full 180-degree angle, are so large relative to its body that they make the ant look structurally improbable, like something designed by an engineer who was given 2 incompatible briefs and told to merge them. The rest of the ant is small and fast and unremarkable. The jaws are something else entirely. They are the fastest moving animal appendage ever recorded. Not the fastest among ant species. Not the fastest among insects. The fastest recorded movement of any appendage produced by any animal that has ever been studied. The strike closes at speeds measured between 126 and 230 kilometers per hour, depending on the individual and the study. It takes between 0.13 and 0.33 milliseconds from trigger to full closure. To put that duration against something the human nervous system can process, the fastest voluntary human movement, a trained boxer's punch at full speed, takes approximately 150 to 200 milliseconds from initiation to contact. The trap jaw strike is complete in less than 1/500th of the time it takes a human to throw a punch. It is not fast in the way that fast animals are fast. It is fast in a different category altogether, a category that required physics to explain and engineering to appreciate, and that the ant arrived at approximately 30 million years before either of those disciplines existed. What the jaw is not is a muscle. This is the first thing that confuses people who hear the speed figures and try to reconcile them with what they know about how animals generate force. Muscles are fast. Some insect flight muscles contract more than 1,000 times per second, but muscles, even the fastest twitch fibers in the most specialized insect, cannot generate the energy release rate required to close a jaw in 0.13 milliseconds. The physics do not allow it. The power output required per unit time exceeds what any known biological muscle tissue can produce directly. What the trap jaw ant has instead is a latch. The jaw does not fire from a resting position. It is cocked. The muscles that control the mandibles work slowly over a period of seconds to open the jaws against their own spring tension and hold them in the open position, storing energy the way a drawn bowstring stores energy, the way a compressed spring stores energy. The jaw muscles are not generating the strike. They are generating the potential for the strike. They pull the mandibles apart and hold them there, against the elastic recoil of specialized structures in the mandible base, loading the system with energy that cannot release, because a set of trigger hairs on the inside of the mandibles are holding it in place. The trigger hairs are exactly what they sound like. Sensory hairs on the inner surface of the mandibles, positioned so that contact with a prey item or a threat activates them. When the trigger hairs are touched, the latch releases. The stored elastic energy in the mandible base releases at once, in a single explosive pulse, driving the mandibles closed at the speed that the muscles could never have generated alone. The muscles provided the energy over seconds. The latch held it. The trigger released it in a fraction of a millisecond. The system converts slow muscle force into instantaneous explosive movement, the way a trebuchet converts slow counterweight movement into fast projectile movement, and it does it in an animal that weighs less than 1/10 of a gram, the prey does not have time to respond. The escape reflexes of most insects operate in the range of tens of milliseconds. The fastest insect escape reflexes, in cockroaches and flies, operate in the 12 to 40 millisecond range. The trap jaw strike closes in 0.15 milliseconds. By the time the neural signal that a predator has touched the prey item has traveled even a fraction of the distance from the sensory neurons to the motor neurons that would initiate escape, the jaws have already closed. The prey's escape system has not failed. It has simply been addressed in a timescale that makes it irrelevant. This is what the ant is standing over when it looks, in field observation, like nothing happened. The beetle did not escape. The beetle could not escape. The jaws reached it before it was physically possible for the beetle to have begun moving. What looked like a blur was the interval between two states of the world: beetle present, beetle launched. The intervening event was faster than any prey item's ability to register that an event was occurring. But the jaw is only half the story, and it is not the half that took researchers the longest to fully account for. The trap jaw ant, having evolved the fastest strike in the animal kingdom to catch prey, uses the same jaw to do something that has no equivalent anywhere in the biology of any other organism. When threatened by a predator too large to be deterred by the strike, the ant snaps its jaws against the ground beneath itself, not toward the predator, against the ground, and it launches into the air. The force of a trap jaw strike against a solid surface is sufficient to propel the ant's own body, not a small hop. A controlled ballistic trajectory that researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, measured systematically by filming trap jaw ants in controlled conditions and tracking their trajectories with high-speed cameras. The ants were propelled upward at speeds exceeding 8 kilometers per hour. They traveled vertically to heights of up to 8 centimeters, which is roughly 6 to 7 times the ant's body length. Horizontally, the escape jump carried them as far as 40 centimeters from the point of origin in a single ballistic arc. In the context of the ant's environment, a forest floor cluttered with debris, fallen leaves, and root structures, 40 centimeters is a vast distance. It is the difference between being inside a predator encounter and being outside it. The ant does not use the jaw launch as a primary locomotion strategy. It has legs, and uses them with the efficiency and coordination that has made ant locomotion a subject of study in robotics for decades. The jaw launch is specifically an escape mechanism, deployed when the predator is too large and too fast for the strike to deter, and the ant's legs cannot generate the acceleration necessary to create sufficient distance before contact occurs. What this means, in evolutionary terms, is that the same structure has been co-opted for two completely different functions. The jaw evolved for prey capture, for the application of force to targets in front of the ant. At some point in the evolutionary history of Odontomachus, the behavior of directing that force downward and using the recoil for escape emerged and was selected for, because individuals who did it survived predator encounters at higher rates than individuals who did not. The jaw did not change, the behavior changed, and the behavioral innovation turned the fastest predatory strike in the animal kingdom into also a ballistic escape system, making the same structure simultaneously, the ant's primary offensive capability and its primary defensive one. Researchers who study trap jaw ants describe this dual function as one of the most striking examples of behavioral exaptation in the insect world. The evolutionary term for when a structure that evolved for one purpose is co-opted for a completely different one. The jaw that catches the beetle is the jaw that escapes the lizard. The speed that makes it impossible for the beetle to flee is the speed that makes it possible for the ant to flee. The same physics, deployed in different directions, serving opposite ecological functions at opposite ends of the predator-prey relationship. The jaw launch behavior was first described systematically by researchers, including Sheila Patek at Duke University, whose laboratory used high-speed cameras and kinematic analysis to characterize the mechanics of both the predatory strike and the escape launch in detail. Patek's work on trap jaw ants has produced some of the most widely cited papers in the biomechanics literature on power amplification. The biological term for the class of mechanisms that use energy storage to achieve force outputs exceeding what direct muscle action can generate. The trap jaw ant is the canonical example of power amplification in the arthropod world, and the data from that research on the jaw's mechanical properties has influenced the design of small-scale robotic actuators and engineering programs that had no initial interest in ants whatsoever. The engineering interest is not superficial. The trap jaw ant has solved a problem that engineers working on small-scale robotic systems have found genuinely difficult to solve independently: how to generate a powerful, fast, controllable strike from a small structure with limited available energy. The latch-mediated spring actuation principle, the slow loading of elastic energy followed by instantaneous release triggered by a discrete mechanical signal, is a principle that robotics laboratories have been attempting to replicate and refine based partly on detailed analysis of the trap jaw ant's jaw structure. The ant arrived at this solution 30 million years ago. The engineering literature on it is contemporary. To understand why the jaw evolved to this level of performance, it helps to understand what the trap jaw ant eats and where it finds it. Odontomachus is primarily a predator of other arthropods, including other ants, beetles, springtails, and a range of other small invertebrates that share the forest floor and leaf litter environment. Many of these prey items are fast. Many have their own escape reflexes refined by millions of years of selection pressure. The springtail, one of the trapjaw ants' common prey items, is itself among the most explosively fast small arthropods in the world, capable of launching itself with a specialized abdominal appendage called the furca in response to the slightest touch or air pressure change. The springtail's escape is fast enough to evade most predators. It is not fast enough to evade a trapjaw strike. The trapjaw ant's jaw speed represents an evolutionary response to prey that are themselves extraordinary escapers. The selection pressure that produced 0.30 millisecond closure times was prey that required 0.13 millisecond closure times to be caught reliably. Every prey species in the trapjaw ant's diet that had an escape reflex fast enough to evade a slower jaw represented selection pressure on the jaw to be faster. Every individual ant whose jaw was fast enough to catch those prey items reproduced at higher rates than individuals whose jaw was slightly slower and missed them. Across millions of generations, that differential reproductive success shaped the jaw toward a performance level that required physics beyond direct muscle power to achieve, driving the evolution of the latch mechanism not as a design solution, but as the only available evolutionary pathway to the speed that catching fast prey demanded. The jaw does not exist in isolation. The trapjaw ant's sensory systems, particularly the trigger hairs on the inside of the mandibles, are as precisely evolved as the jaw itself. The sensitivity required to fire the strike at the right moment, late enough to ensure contact with the prey item, but early enough that the strike completes before the prey's escape reflex activates, is not trivial to achieve. A trigger that fires too easily produces wasted strikes against air and debris. A trigger that fires too conservatively allows prey to initiate escape before the jaw closes. The trigger hair sensitivity has been calibrated by selection pressure over the same time scale as the jaw speed itself, and the two systems are matched to each other in a way that reflects millions of years of coevolution between them. The forest floor that the trapjaw ant moves through is not a simple environment. To a human observer standing above it, the leaf litter of a Central American rainforest looks like undifferentiated debris. Fallen leaves in various stages of decomposition, twigs, root fragments, the dark compressed organic layer where soil begins. To the trapjaw ant moving through it at ground level, it is a complex three-dimensional landscape with its own geography, its own corridors and chambers, its own predator territories and prey densities and chemical trails left by nestmates who have passed through hours or days before. The ant reads this landscape continuously through its antennae, sweeping them through the air with every step, collecting information about what has been here, what is here now, what direction things are moving, and whether any of those things represent food or danger. The chemical information the trapjaw ant collects through its antennae encodes a picture of its environment as detailed and spatially precise as the visual picture. A mammal with large eyes would construct from the same space, but organized entirely around chemistry rather than light. The ant knows the trail pheromone concentration gradient, which tells it how recently a nestmate passed this way and in which direction. It knows the alarm pheromone concentration in the air around it, which tells it whether a threat has been detected nearby by another colony member. It knows the contact chemistry of every surface it steps on, which tells it whether that surface has been recently occupied by prey, by competitors, or by nothing of immediate significance. The nestmate chemical recognition system is particularly precise in Odontomachus. Like all ant species, trapjaw ants recognize colony members through colony-specific chemical profiles on their cuticle surface, cuticular hydrocarbons that function as a chemical identity badge and are assessed through antennal contact whenever two ants meet. The assessment is fast, and the decision it produces is binary: nestmate or not nestmate. If nestmate, the interaction proceeds normally. If not nestmate, the interaction becomes something else, and the jaw, already loaded, already sensitive at its trigger hairs, is part of what that something else involves. Encounters between trapjaw ant workers from different colonies are among the most concentrated expressions of the jaw's offensive function in the field. Inter-colony conflict in Odontomachus is not the mass recruitment warfare that army ants conduct, or the sustained territorial campaign of fire ants. It tends to be individual or small group encounters at colony boundaries, where workers from neighboring colonies meet while foraging, and the jaw proves equally effective as a combat weapon. The same speed that prevents prey from escaping prevents an enemy worker from avoiding a strike after the chemical identity assessment has returned the result, not nestmate. The same trigger, sensitivity that fires on a springtail fires on an intruder's antenna. The same physics that drives the mandibles closed around a beetle drives them closed around whatever is in front of them when the trigger hairs activate. The versatility of the jaw across these different contexts reflects the broader principle that biological structures rarely evolve for a single function and then stop being relevant to everything else. The jaw that was shaped by selection for prey capture was already useful for combat and for escape before any selection pressure specific to those functions had acted on it, because the physics of fast forceful closure apply equally to anything the jaw contacts. What selection for escape behavior and combat effectiveness added was not modification of the jaw itself, but modification of the behavioral triggers and contexts in which the jaw fires. The spring mechanism inside the trapjaw ant's mandible has been the subject of detailed materials analysis in studies examining what specifically stores the elastic energy during the loading phase and releases it during the strike. The mandible base contains specialized cuticular structures with material properties distinct from the surrounding cuticle that deform elastically when the muscles pull the mandibles open and recoil when the latch releases. The material properties of these structures, their stiffness, their elastic modulus, their energy storage density, have been characterized in detail and compared to engineered spring materials. The comparison reveals that the biological material performs within a range that engineering approaches to the same problem at the same scale have found difficult to significantly exceed. Researchers who have built robotic actuators inspired by trapjaw and jaw mechanics have produced devices capable of strike speeds and force-to-mass ratios that conventional direct-drive electric motors at the same scale cannot match. The applications being explored include small inspection robots capable of rapid manipulation of objects, medical micro-devices requiring fast, precise movements in confined spaces, and small-scale gripping systems for delicate object handling. In each case, the design challenge is the same one the trapjaw ant solved 30 million years ago: how to generate fast, forceful, controllable movement from a structure with limited available power. In the colony, which in a mature Odontomachus Bowery nest may contain between a few hundred and a few thousand individuals, the workers that carry the jaw are not the colony's only layer of defense, but they are its fastest one. A trapjaw ant colony, threatened at its nest entrance, does not rely on numbers or on chemical recruitment of reinforcements the way a fire ant colony would. It relies on jaws. The workers stationed near the nest entrance, when a threat is detected, respond immediately and individually, and the speed of that response at the individual level means the colony's defensive capacity does not depend on the delay required to recruit a large defending force. In the small colonies that Odontomachus maintains, where the numbers available for mass defense would never be competitive against larger species, the jaw compensates for numerical inferiority with individual response speed that numerical superiority cannot outpace at the encounter level. The queen, whose founding of the colony preceded all of this by years, selected the nest location. The founding queen, unlike the queens of many ant species, does not have stored resources sufficient to raise the first cohort of workers without foraging. She must hunt while tending her first eggs and larvae, alone, without the protection of workers, in an environment that contains all the same predators her workers will later face. Her jaw is what makes this possible. The same jaw that her workers will use for prey, capture, and colony defense was functional in her before she produced a single worker, and her foraging success during the colony establishment period determines whether the colony survives long enough that workers can take over these functions. Every established Odontomachus colony is the direct evidence that its founding queen survived this period. Every jaw in the colony was inherited from that queen. The jaw in the worker on the leaf, closing in 0.13 milliseconds on the beetle that had no time to respond, is the jaw that the founding queen used alone in a small chamber in the soil while her first eggs were still developing around her. The phylogenetic analysis of the Odontomachus lineage and its relatives suggests that the latch-mediated power amplification mechanism evolved once and was refined continuously across approximately 30 million years since. The modern trap-jaw ant's jaw performance represents the current endpoint of that refinement, not necessarily the maximum the mechanism is capable of producing. There is no reason from an evolutionary standpoint to expect that jaw speed has reached its biological limit. The ants alive today are faster than the ants of 10 million years ago. The physics of latch-mediated spring actuation impose limits set by the speed of elastic wave propagation in biological materials, and those limits have not been reached. On the leaf, the ant is moving again, not back toward the nest, outward into the leaf litter beyond the leaf edge, where the chemical trail of a springtail crosses the organic debris layer, and the concentration gradient tells the ant that the springtail passed recently and was moving in a direction that, if maintained, would bring it to a location the ant can reach before the trail goes cold. The jaw is open. The latch is set. The trigger hairs are sensitive to contact they have not yet received. Somewhere in the debris ahead, a springtail is moving with the explosive confidence of an animal that has never failed to escape a predator in its life. The trap-jaw ant has been solving this problem for 30 million years. Every springtail that escaped a slower jaw was selection pressure. Every springtail that did not escape was a meal and a reproductive advantage for the jaw that caught it. The system running now, in this ant, on this leaf, in this forest, is the accumulated output of 30 million years of that arithmetic. The springtail ahead does not know any of this. It is moving with the explosive confidence of an animal whose escape system has never failed it. The trap-jaw ant is already closing the distance. It has not yet encountered this one.